Okay, so now we're on to the second pass. Our client's gotten back to us. They're pretty happy with the direction the first pass has taken. There are some issues with matching up the skin tones, but there are no major creative feedback. There's no major creative problems and no real feedback there. They just want us to get through and finish it up and deliver on time. Our first pass did a lot of the work here. So we're just going to go through and we're going to just do our fine match. We're going to make sure everything matches quite nicely. And we're just going to take care of it all. So the main thing we're going to be doing is our tracking, our face tracking and face vignettes. We're going to make a second stills bin. This time we're going to call this second pass. And we're going to go in and I've increased the saturation, well, I've increased the contrast and taken the saturation down a little bit on our contributor's face. And now before and after, just a bit more contrast, a bit more of a natural focal point. So I'm going to go through and do the same. Now I'm just going to copy it across. It's going to copy only the clip grade across when we middle click on the timeline like that, or on this little thumbnail list like that. And it's going to take the old tracking with it. Or in this case it's not, it'll take the tracking with it if you do that from a still. So we just need to put it in the right place and track it through on this shot. And there we go, we're pretty happy with that. So now we're going to do the same here. We're going to make our face vignette. Remember, click this icon to activate shapes. Then we want a circular window. And then we'll just track that through. Maybe take a bit of the saturation out. What we'll do now is we'll just take a still of that in second pass, and now we want to make a comparison and make sure that things are actually matching up. I think that's pretty accurate, so now what we're going to do is actually watch it through. Okay, maybe the highlights are a little bit brighter on the wide. We're getting a few clipped channels here, so maybe just... Okay, that should be okay. In fact, what we'll do is we'll bring that up a little bit, and we'll just bring the red channel back under control. There we go. Okay, that's making him a little bit silvery, so we'll just bring it back, and we'll just bring that down a little bit, make sure we haven't clipped any channels on the face. And we go from there to there. Let's see how that edits. I think the face is okay there. I noticed there's a little bit of green in the background, so let's see if we can try and iron that out. I think that's made an improvement. Let's go back and check it. In fact, let's save, and we'll make a full frame playback. Okay, I think that might just be a little bit bright now that I look at it, so let's just bring the overall brightness of it down. Maybe still a little bit bright. Okay, I think that's a pretty good edit. Looking between these two, I think they match very well indeed. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to put green flags on these 3 shots to show that I'm happy with them. Now we can move on here. Now this is mostly there. This yellow glow on the right hand side of our contributor's face is still a bit of a pain. So what we will do, I'm going to right click in here, add node and a corrector. I'm going to drop that right on the end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed the mask from our skin key, node 3, into this. And then I'm going to go and reverse the key. And now I've got a second node where I'm working inside here. I'm going to tackle this glow like I did before. I'm going to bring up the minimum saturation. And there I've now only got the most saturated parts of the skin tone selected. I'll blur that out. And I'm just going to bring that saturation down a smidge and make it a little bit redder. And now, if you look closely, we had that kind of tungsten tint on the right hand side, and now it's gone completely. That just bugged me when I saw that before. So now we have no trace of that awkward tungsten glow on his face. I am now going to do a face vignette, and I think I'm going to make a bigger vignette on this shot as well. Give me 1 second, I've just got a bit of dust on my screen. So let's do the face vignette first. We'll make a circular window. On this rare occasion, right smack dab in the middle of his hooter is where we want to put the centre of the window. Ah, no, I stand corrected. Just about there. Cool, and we will track that forwards. We're going to have to keyframe this a little bit, so I'm going to cover keyframing in a second. Or we'll recap keyframing in a second. Okay, so this is mostly fine, right up to the point where it diverges here. So we're going to keyframe this to fix it. We're going to hit the diamonds here. Now this is our keyframing dialog. I'm going to keep keyframing very short and simple because this is going to be a long session anyway. Basically, a keyframe is a point where we have a set of significant values, and when we have 2 keyframes, the program does what we call interpolation between those 2 keyframes. It moves from one set of values to the next. And in the very simplest terms, we can move an object from one place on frame to the next. We can change color. You can actually keyframe absolutely everything in the grade like we covered before. But in this case, I'm just going to use it to manually clean up a track that diverges at this point. So we go to where it begins to diverge, which is here. Then on corrector 8, on the circular window, we're going to hit the diamond to enable keyframing. We're going to right click and choose add dynamic keyframe. Then we're going to go to where it finishes diverging, and that's usually when these little peaks and troughs in the lines here start to level out. We're going to add another dynamic keyframe, and then we're just going to drag it back on there. And now we're going to go back to the end, and we're just going to fix it and make sure it's right on there. So now that fixes it. We're going to turn keyframing off so we don't change anything by mistake. And now we're just going to fix the contrast in our contributor's face here. So we'll bring these shadows down, we'll turn the window off, we'll bring these shadows down, and the highlights up a little bit, and then we'll bring the saturation down slightly, stop them from going bright orange. And we just want maybe a little bit more pink. A little bit more in the highlights, a little bit. A little bit less colour. There we go. I think that's a pretty good match between those two. Now, the big thing is these 2 shots are in very different locations and do have different lighting. They're not going to be identical in their setup and their look, but what we want is to avoid any kind of jarring, and I think that's very good. I think that edit is fine. It doesn't jar at all. There's a little bit of stuff we can fix. We've got some noise. But what we will do is we will take care of that noise in our third pass. Our third pass is likely not to take very long in this instance, because we're getting a lot of our work done in the second pass. I'm now happy with that. watching it through, comparing it. I will put a green flag on that. My only complaint with this shot is that it's looking a little bit misty, and maybe the contrast isn't there. The kind of grounding blacks that we need aren't quite there. So why don't we just take a shifty? We'll get our scopes back up so we can see what we're doing. Okay, and the challenge we face is if we bring the shadows down, obviously this gets a little bit too dark, so we might just bring things in. That's still looking a little bit saturated. Maybe we'll just take some of the colour out of there. There we go. Okay, now that I watched that through, I can see a little bit of a halo. So let's just fix that. Let's go back to our keyframing. We've made sure we've got keyframing on. Now when we change it, it'll lay a keyframe down automatically, and we just want to go through and make sure that we don't have that kind of halo. Let's just watch that through without. Maybe I saw a little there, can see it again. Little bit around the edge, so what we can do is we'll just bring that in. Can just about see it there. Okay, let's just undo what we did. Then we will pull it back in and avoid that halo hitting the outside. And then what we will do is we'll just drag that over here, make it less likely to hit outside. Then right at the end we'll put another one back in there. Okay, and that's fine. Now fix the tracking on that vignette. That vignette was a bit of a challenge. There's quite a strong adjustment within it, so if it deviates slightly we will see a kind of halo effect, but we've since fixed that. Now, when we start here it's a little bit airy and washed out, but then when we come down we do actually get... that looks too dark to me actually, let's put that back to where it was. So we'll just see how these two edit together. Not ideal, but I think that's okay. It's not super jarring. The yellow in this hair here is a little bit distracting on that edit though, so we'll just go in with a sat versus sat. Okay. Just pull that down ever so slightly. Okay, some of the shadows on the left hand side here are getting a little bit harsh. So we'll just bring our mids down. And we've got a bit of noise and a bit of colour in those shadows, so what I'm going to do is also go to the end and then pull that colour out. I'll do some of this really fine detailed stuff in our third pass, which shouldn't take very long. Fine. Now let's make sure, let's take a look. Okay, that's a much better edit. I'm going to put a green flag on these two clips. Now, as we're going through, I'm taking a note of small details that I want to get absolutely perfect, but that the client is unlikely to realise. Throughout, we've got noise. I will cover noise reduction in our final pass, and also we've got some colour noise in our shadows. You can just see little bits, specks of red and blue in our shadows. We're going to go through in our third pass and make an adjustment with Lum VSAT and just keep these under control. This, I would actually say, is absolutely fine. I wouldn't change anything about this. It's so significantly different from everything else that most of the real differences between it and the rest of the edit are justified. But the hue of the red brick back here is nice in keeping with everything else. Red brick is a memory colour, but we haven't changed it so much that it looks unnatural. It's not very like lemon yellow, so that's okay. We're now going to come to this shot. Now, we were mostly okay with this, save for a bit of face vignetting we were going to do, but we were also going to fix a few things, or we're mainly going to fix the close-ups and do a bit of keyframing and animation, but for the time being, her hair does get a bit in the way. We'll just bring that down a smidge. That just adds a nice bit of contrast there. We get those brown eyes coming out really nicely. And we haven't got a visible circle on the hair. That's really important. That, I would say, is okay. Let's just take a look from there to there. Maybe I could do with a bit more contrast. Maybe I'll bring the shadows down a smidge more. Tell you what I'll also do at the end is, there we go, I've already done a Lumpy set, haven't I? Cool, and now, that's nice. Her suit, jacket, dress, blouse, whatever it is she's wearing isn't as strongly blue as that, but that's okay because it's not naturally. We've kept our nice blue colour scheme. And now here we've got a bit of manual keyframing to do on this node with this mask, like we said before. So we're going to go to the manual keyframing, unfurl corrector 3, go to the start, and then activate keyframing, not for polygon window, but for power curve, because this is our curve window that we've got here. We're going to add a dynamic keyframe, and then we're just going to make sure that as we go through, we keep it clear of anything that might be interfered with. And then we also make sure that it doesn't expose a big yellow halo on the wall behind our contributor here. Okay, now we're going to watch this through a few times, see if we can spot any errors. See if we can spot there's a little blue speck on her scalp if the masking goes wrong. See there's no blue appearing in her eyes. See there's no yellow halo on the wall here, and that all seems perfect. We will save. And now, right at the end, we'll put a bit of a face vignette on. Again, it might not be as necessary on this shot. We'll soften that up a bit more. Keep that skin under control. No, that's a little bit weird. Okay, she is still a little bit red on this shot. So let us make a new node for skin. There we go, I think that's more or less an ideal match. We'll just grab a still. I think between those two, the skin tones are more or less ideal match there. Okay, so I'm now happy with that. First off, I'm going to clear all flags, and then I'm going to flag them green. It's possible for a shot to maintain a flag of every colour. So I'm going to clear it all and then add green. And now I know that I'm happy with that shot. I also know I'm happy with this shot, now that I think on it. So we're going to slowly work through the timeline, you know, signing off on shots we're happy with, essentially with the big green flag. And we're just going to go straight through our timeline and do that throughout. Our third pass is going to be very simple. It's mainly going to be just taking care of shadow noise and a bit of a noise reduction pass. Maybe some very, very slight tweaks upon watching the timeline through again. but most of our work is going to have been done in the first and second passes on this project. Third pass is typically polish and very fine match. It's not typically like changing a lot of things very drastically. So here we go. On this one, I'm really happy with this overall. It's going to be a face vignette again. Resolve does have an effect meant to refine faces automatically. My personal opinion is that it has some way to go yet, so I do the face vignette method. I'm going to add just a little bit of contrast there. Down the saturation slightly. I've just added a little bit of extra clarity there. Those eyes come out quite nicely. On the subject of eyes, we could justifiably go back to this shot and make a mask for the individual eyes. I don't think it's necessary here. We might do this on another angle just for the sake of demonstration. Now there's still a bit of green showing here, so let's go back and see if we can make our curve a little bit more. Okay, I think that's much better. So we're going to want to do our face vignette. Let's just make sure. Okay, maybe her skin's a little bit different. Okay, we'll increase the saturation a little bit here. Okay, I think that's a better match. Now, looking at the two here, she has a very nice high contrast. Already, I don't think I might really need a face vignette in this close-up, although one thing has just jumped out to me, and that would be in the corner of her eye here, this very strong saturated bit. So I'm just going to make a quick HSL. I'm doing this all in group pre-clip, so it hits the others as well, because I'm not doing any vignetting in this one. We're just going to take care of that saturated shadow, and we will pull the sat back a little bit, and then we'll just keep that odd saturated thing in her cornea, I think, or is it tear duct, corner of her eye. It also hit a problematic area in the center of the nostril as well. Now let's just save. We're going to play this one through and see how the edit goes. Okay, I think the hair is a little bit redder in this one, so let's just go back to what we did with the skin. Okay, I think that's a good match. We'll save, and I'm going to put green flags on these two. Flags green. And now I'm just going to copy paste that vignette onto this one, and we will track it once again. And we will put a green flag on this shot as well, and slowly but surely we're working our way through the entire timeline. Now this still looks a little bit dark to me in comparison to the others. If I... Actually, it's pretty good. No, maybe that's fine. Maybe I just... Nope, that's okay. Fair enough. Just making stuff up. He's a little bit yellower than others, but it's okay. We can have a bit of variation in our skin tones. Our board director is quite a pink individual, and you get that. You be surprised. Like, you see people, like, by eye, we all look to be of a similar hue. Then on camera, someone just looks really, really pink. Right, I wouldn't fiddle around with that too much. I would just do, you guessed it, a face vignette. We did quite a comprehensive first pass on this one, so we're not going to go through a huge amount of radically different detailing here. And it does help that the client was quite happy. In later projects, we are going to be dealing with clients who want quite significant changes. Cool. Bring the saturation down ever so slightly. Nice. Good bit of focus there. Okay, green flag. Right, this one is mostly good. I might just add a bit of an overall vignette here. And just focusing things in on our two employees there. And to do that, obviously, I'm just drawing a shape and then I'm hitting this invert mask button. So I'm working outside of that shape, so I make a kind of circular vignette around the whole thing. And you can just see the effect that has is to make a bit of a border or a frame around the whole thing. And I will leave that there and give that a green flag for this pass. So let's just check. That's alright, there's a little bit of green here. Let's just see if we can improve the curve we've made to manage the blue. So let's see if I can smooth out the curve and get rid of some of the little green halos left around. Cool, that's much better. Okay, let's just check what we have. It may be that we don't actually need a vignette here. Nope, we do definitely need a bit of a face vignette, so we're just going to put that on there. And we'll just track that forwards. Resolves tracker is very, very good indeed. Let's just get an idea of what we're after. We'll bring that up. Bring that down, and we'll just kill the saturation slightly to keep it under control. Maybe that's just a little bit desaturated. I think that's a pretty good match. Let's nice. Right, we'll save and we'll put a green flag on that. This shot, we know what we're doing. We're just going to paste the vignette on and track. And this does get a little bit tedious. Feel free to wind on in the video if you want to. That's fine. And now what we're going to do is sort this mask out as well. And then we're going to keyframe. In fact, I don't even think we need to keyframe this one here. Let's just check the mask. Okay, no, we are getting a little bit of interference on the skin, so we're going to be careful, and we're just going to make sure that we keyframe it. Make sure we avoid leaving any halo on there. Cool. Let's just watch that through a few times, make sure it's okay. Bit of noise, but we're going to take care of noise in our third pass. Excellent, that's good. We'll save and we'll give that a green flag. We'll clear all. Flag, green. Right, we know what we're doing on this shot. Once again, tracking a face vignette. And we'll put a green flag on that one. Right, so this one's going to need a little bit more work. We've got that odd yellow glowing effect, and we just want to make sure that it's a bit more under control. So we'll bring the colour of the skin down a little bit. We might just swing it over so it's a bit more red. And that's better. And let's just check the vector scope, and we have things pointing towards blue as well. That's very good. Okay, I think given how drastically different the two lighting scenarios are, that's a pretty good match. Let's just see how they edit and see if it throws up anything that's really jarring. A little bit bright, isn't it? Just add a last primary, and what we'll do is we'll bring everything down a little bit and then see if that helps. She's still a little bit orange. Maybe we could... That is not what I intended to do at all. There we go. And maybe just bring that saturation down slightly. Okay, I think that's an alright match. It's not too jarring, and then we go back into that again. Good, I will put a green flag on that. In some circumstances, the match is never going to be truly, truly perfect. What we're aiming for is to make this look like it belongs in the edit, and I believe that's the case there. It's not particularly jarring. We might watch that through in the third pass and come back to it, but I'm pretty happy with that edit. Let's just watch it through one last time. Now, I am happy with that. Cool. This one. Okay, this one's going to take a bit of work, I'm pretty sure. We still have a lot of yellow in here, don't we? I'm just a bit wary of noisy crushed shadows down here. And insufficient highlights. It's an awkward one. We have very warm, colourful things being the brightest, and they tend to kind of blow out a little bit and go a bit glowy. So we just want to try and control the saturation in our highlights, really, when we work on this, to avoid kind of weird glowing qualities. Let's just see how these edit. Still yellow, isn't it? That's frustrating. Okay, let's take another. I think that's a better match. Cool. That's fine. Maybe I could just bring the highlights here up a little bit and keep that kind of bright touch. I'll bring those up, and then I'll go back to the RGB curves, and I will save those blown out hotspots from the practicals. The background's a little bit cyan, so I will impose a secondary, and I will make one. I will make a new node, and what we'll do is we'll bring the cyans down a bit so they're more with the on-brand blue. There we go. Now we have that nice blue running through everything. In this case, the blue might just be a little bit aggressively blue. It might just be just tinting into magenta, and we want to avoid that, so just bring that down a little bit, and there we go. We're back to our dude again, so we're just gonna plonk that vignette on there and get to business. was damn. That was dumb. Okay, so this shot, and how are we going? We're about... I will put a yellow flag on this one and come back to that in the third pass, because it's getting close but still needs more work. There are always a few awkward shots, and the lighting in here is just a little bit awkward. Got a lot of very strong warm light on skin tones, and that tends to make things quite difficult to deal with. We can come back to it later rather than blow a load of time right now. That I'm happy with. I'll give a green flag. Let's just watch this through, make sure we don't have any halos around the face. That's fine. Cool, that's nice. I think we might just bring some shadows down a little bit in here to make sure that we keep that kind of nice contrasty definition going. You know what, we'll fix that in the third pass, that's fine, we'll come back to that. Right, this needs some darker shadows. And it definitely needs some of the yellow tilting to red. Let's just take a look at our vector scope. Our blues are quite cyan back here, so what we will then do is make a new node. And I don't like what's happening with his ears here, so we'll do a HSL to control that in a second. We'll just get that blue to be a bit closer. Right, now let's take care of these very saturated bits of his ears. As always, saturated shadows which behave a little bit oddly. We'll just pull those down a little bit, and now they're gone. If we look very closely, we can see the difference that's made. Bit glowy, bit odd. Brought down, brought back under control. Fine. I think... No, if this shot was stationary, I would put a vignette on there, but we tend not to vignette with static shapes when a shot moves a lot because it gives the vignette away and it makes it look artificial. So I would say that that's okay. Let's just see how it edits. A little bit bright, but then it is a bright shot. Bring the parade back up so I know what I'm doing. Cool, I'm happy with that. I shall put a green flag on there. That shot I'm quite happy with. I think I might just get the blue to go in line. Make a new node for that. Now we're just making sure that we keep that significant brand blue. Just make sure we keep that significant brand blue throughout. Now there are little bits on her hair which look a little bit odd here, so I'm going to add another curve and I'm going to take some of the saturation out of the shadows. It can still be a bit there, but I just didn't want it to be as, because it was kind of glowing and looking a bit odd, and now that's brought that back under control. So that's fine, I'm very happy with that. Nice hairstyle.